Okay, so in this tutorial, I'm going to build a little chain, a linked chain, as a way of maybe just demoing a little bit of modeling. And the second part of this is how to use a cloner to create an effector that goes with it to create this chain. We don't want to spend our time kind of moving every single one of these. We want to have a little bit of variability that we can add to it. We want to be able to quickly make it as long or short as we need to. But first, to do this, we need to have a link, right, that we're going to use. And right now, I just have a torus, right? I've made this torus taking into account like what the actual, like a thin chain might be. Well, this is actually a pretty thick one, but it's 20 centimeters by 7 centimeters is the pipe radius here. I just left the segments kind of where it was at, 16 and 32. That should be fine. It could be more, it could be less, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so the thing is, I want this to look, I want it to be kind of a longer shape, right? I don't want a perfectly round link, right? I want this to be more kind of an oval. So the top half of this is right, and the bottom half of this, but in the middle, I need it to be longer. So multiple ways to do this, and don't mind me, I'm going to turn off my work plane here. So if I have one half of this, if I select on the torus, you can see we have the object settings, but we also have slice. So if I turn this on, the default is 0 to 180, which is fine. I'm going to move that one down, and I'm going to duplicate it. And oops, in fact, before I do that, let me go back here. We'll leave that one there. I'm going to duplicate it, each one of these, and I'm going to turn this duplicate, I'm going to move it down, right? And then the first one, instead of 0 to 180, we can see kind of where the 0 starts, right? So if I make this 180 to 360, I have the two halves of my chain link, right? This is what I'm going to use. And so then what I need to do is turn them into one object, and I need to kind of close these holes. Actually, I'm going to connect this side and leave a little opening in between, as we often see on some of these links here. So to make this one object, I could use the connect, and then I could make edit from that, and it would give me a polygon object. You can also just select these two objects. This is kind of like the quick way of doing connect. If I select both of these two right here, I'm just in object mode. If I right click and I say connect objects and delete, even though I hadn't done the make edit command, because I combined them, it turned them into raw polygon objects and then connected the two of them. So they're, if I go into polygon mode and I select, I can select, these are, even though they're two islands of polygons, they're the same object, right? That's in there, okay? So that's the first part of this. This is working kind of fine. There's another issue that we've created here, but let's just first deal with the connecting. So I'm just going to go into my front view, and I'm just going to change my live selection to rectangle and draw just a little marquee box here. And what that's doing is selecting those at that section. You can see, because of connecting in the way the slice default is, it created these kind of irregular triangular caps on there, and I don't want those. So I'm just going to delete them. And then I'm going to just right click and say close polygon hole. So if I just click on it, hover over this edge, it's like, hey, there's a hole right there. I'll create a big fat polygon to fill that up for you, right? So now I have those two halves. We're getting somewhere. Let's do the simple part here. I'm going to select this one and do extrude. So I'm just bring it down, something like that. Then I'm going to select the bottom one, and I'll do the same thing. I'll extrude it up. And if I want to, you could go into edge mode. You don't have to do this, but could If I hit U on my keyboard and L for loop selection, I can select the loop, and this would be one right there. Got it. And let's see if I can get that other one. There we go. And I'm holding down Shift, so both of those are selected. I'm going to right click and say bevel. And I've just beveled those with the 2 subdivisions, just, so it doesn't just have a really hard edge. Okay, so that's this section here. That's fine. Now what I need to do is link these 2 sections, or bridge, I think should be a better term here. I need to bridge this and this. So I select these 2 polygons, and I will right click and say bridge. Now, bridge takes this selection, and I need to kind of tell it, hey, how do you want to connect these things together? So what I'm going to do is click and drag, and you see I clicked on a vertex, it kind of snapped to it, and I let go, and it connects these, right? If I had done it maybe, say, like this, it creates this weird path, right? I don't want that one. So just make sure that you have the edge that corresponds from the top half to the bottom, right? And it will merge those together. And as the default, it deletes the original polygon. So the ones that were inside of there are now gone. And I have this awesome little link for my, my chain, all right? Okay, so that's the first part. Now, the other thing to mention here, if I go into object mode, is the, I guess it would kind of work here. One thing to keep in mind with the cloner tool is where this transform is, right? The little thing that guides where the object is kind of important, where it rotates and where it pivots. It should probably work here in the center because that's it's still in alignment, but just for my own peace of mind and just to make the point, what I did is while I'm in object mode, I turned on the axis tool, which allows me to move where the axis is. And I put it up here towards this center part, just to, basically I put it right back at the, where it was at the origin, 0, 0, 0, and I hit apply there. And then I'm going to move out of that axis tool. So from here, if it rotates, let's go back into this view, right? When I position this using the cloner, I want it to be able to rotate from a certain vantage point. So this one, the main thing is to have it centered down the middle. So even if you don't do this step, but I just wanted you to be aware that that's important to think about. Okay. So at this point, we're ready to go with the cloner, right? I have one thing, one piece, right? And now I just need a whole bunch of copies. So I think in class I did a quick example where I had 10 links. So I'm going to create the cloner right here. Oops, sorry, not this one right here. I'm going to create that cloner. And I'm going to put the link, in fact, let's name it, right? It was a torus, I'll call it link. And I'm going to put that in the cloner. And as a default, the cloner, underneath its object, little tab there, does a bunch of copies in a grid, 3 by 1 by 3, right? Well, this does not help us because we want to, we want it to go straight down. So instead of a grid or a radial thing, we just want a linear, right? So we can already see it gave us 3 copies. If I increase the copies, you can see that they're moving up in space here. But what we really want them to do is move, well, in this case, I want them to move down. So I'll just say minus 50 units per step, right? So now I had my object kind of sized up, just given the size. It works pretty well, saying that, hey, every time you move one of these, make it move so many units, right? So the number you come up with, it might not be 50 or whatever, you should just change it so that, well, let's use this view here. That's best. Because from the chain's point of view, we want these 2 things to basically touch, right? Because they're going to be in contact with each other. Forget the fact that they're intersecting with each other. But if this was rotated 90 degrees, this loop would balance itself under the other loop. So let's do minus 50.5. That's pretty close. Minus 50.75. Oh, that seems to be just perfect, right? So I have 3 of these. So that's how much it's going to move every time I create a copy. Let's just go ahead and give it 20, right? So we have this big chain, right? So we're close. Hopefully everyone sees the problem is that they're all intersecting with each other and they're all facing the same direction, right? They should alternate with them, with each other, right? That's the, side to side, front to back, side to side, front to back, right? So what we need to do is use something to modify the clones. And whenever we want to modify the clones within this little clone menu, we want to be using an effector, right? So within the clone here, I'm going to choose the step effector. So this, if I just choose this here, and I should mention I have the cloner selected and it has its own tab here for effectors. Right now you can see there's nothing in it. If I have the cloner selected and I go up and say step, and I go back and click on the cloner, you can see that the step is in here, and you can also see that it's doing something. It's not doing the right something, but it's doing something. If for whatever reason you didn't see anything happen, maybe you didn't have the cloner selected, and to make the effector actually affect the cloner, I can just take the step and click and drag and drop it in here and say, hey, use that thing. All right, so it's doing something, but it's not doing the right thing. The default, every one of the effectors has its own default. It will do something. And here, what it did is it's increasing the scale every time that it goes through this, so that by the end it's 100% or twice as big, right? The increase is 100%. Over the distribution of all those. Well, that's clearly what we do not want that, right? So I'll turn that off. And we don't want to change the position, right? We don't want to, we don't want it to, like a set of stairs, gradually increase in one direction. But we do want it to, so let's turn off position. We do want it to rotate, right? So if you're having a hard time trying to figure out what the axis might be, that first one here, the H is going to be the right one. Clearly, this is not the right thing. Turn that off. And we don't want that, right? That seems kind of weird, right? But so as we were looking at the first one, the heading, this is basically correct. And you can see it's kind of twisting, but if I keep twisting, and what this is the total amount. It's not how much per step, right? It's if I have 20 copies, 20 clones in here, right? By the time it finishes putting all those copies in there, it will be, so let's just say 360, right? So you can see that it starts twisting, and now it's facing, it looks exactly like that one here. So it kind of made its way through, but it's still intersecting with itself, right? That's not right. So you can't just do this you can do this as the Price is Right game, the high-low game, right? You could say 5,000, I don't know, maybe that's close enough. That actually works okay, right, in this example. So you could just guess at a number. If you wanted to be precise with it, since we want to make, we have 20 clones, it's actually 90 transitions, right? The first one is 0, and then we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we do 19. So if we do 19 times, we can actually do a little math in the input field. 90, we will get that perfect 0, 90, 180, 270, 360, whatever comes after that, right? And it just keeps adding 90 until we get 1,710. Now, before I put 5,000, it just kept rotating it. Maybe it does it 300 or I guess 180 degrees or 360 degrees or 270 degrees might do this, right, with the offset. So, but in this case, I just want 90, right? And it just keeps flipping through there, and I get this this nice chain link. So I did it so that it's perfect because I wanted to make sure that it was kind of lined up with each other and it looked like it was kind of resting on the chain. I'm not going to do like a dynamic simulation, though I could with this. But I do want to maybe vary it up so it's not perfect. So I used the step effector to make this incremental change, I'm going to click on the cloner again, and I'm going to go back into the clone menu, and this time I'm going to choose random. So as I mentioned, every effector is set up to do, has like default settings, just so you can see it's working. And here we have position, so it's exploding the clones across there. We don't really want that. Again, we don't want to change scale. This would just randomize that. But we do want to randomize the rotation. And again, we used the heading under heading, pitch, and bank, right? Or XYZ, if you want to kind of think of it that way. But this is the one that we were using. So if I just want to add a little variation to this, right? Somewhere between 0 and 15 degrees. I don't know. Let's just maybe add a little bit more. 22. I don't want to do it so much that they start intersecting with each other. But I'm getting a little bit of variation across that, right? You can see that they're not perfectly lined up with each other. If I turn off random, you can see that they're perfect. Right, let's do a little zoom in there, right? So they're perfectly, back and forth. But if I turn on a little bit of random, they're not intersecting with each other, but I get this nice chain outside of this, right? And there you go, right? So we have this, you can do whatever you want with this. As you would imagine, there's so many different ways we could use a cloner to actually make these work across a curve instead of just duplicating in a linear fashion here. But in the example that the student was after, this was, they just wanted to hang from the ceiling. So this is a perfect little setup. We will say, within the cloner, you can do things where, let's go back to this here. I'm going to make a duplicate of that link, and I'm just going to hide everyone else. So if I wanted to, maybe just to change it up a little bit, maybe I take this and just bend it a little bit so that this one's somewhat different in its makeup. This isn't going to be perfect. I just want to maybe make a point here about how this works, right? So and I'm going to do a normal scale, so just shrink this down. Oops, let's not do that actually. I'll just call that good, right? So I've kind of changed that there. So I have two links. So within a cloner, I'm going to turn on the viewport solo, right? So I can see everything. Okay, so I'm going to put this into the cloner system. And what it's going to do is, you can see here, this one showed up. So every other one is a bent one, a clean one, a bent one. Within the cloner setup, I could tell it, instead of iterating through the clones, which just means go through that list of them, let's call this link bent. Within that clone, I can say, randomly select from the children within the cloner, right? So that in fact, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to duplicate the link, the clean one, and then I just have one bent one. So every once in a while, it does one that's a little bit messed up, or quite a few times, depending on how it's iterating through that random selection of these. If I did the right one, I don't even know, right? Yeah, I did put it at random. So you could iterate through there. There we go. So just the idea that you could have several different link types in here if you want to add some variation within the clone. The clone will randomly pick from this group of prototypes, I guess. All right. Oh my God, it's almost 20 minutes. That's my limit for a tutorial. All right, recap. A little bit of modeling magic, a little multiple select and connect into one clean object. We did a little bridging, a little beveling. And then we threw that link into a cloner, we actually did a little bit of math, right? We used our little calculator in the number field to figure out what the right amount of total rotation was for the 20 links. So we've got a clean chain, and then we added a few effectors to the clone to get some variation in it. Okay, we'll call that good. Happy modeling.